Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know that intake 3 of the Movement Mentorship is officially open. It kicks off on January 13th. It is 8 weeks in total, with 6 of those weeks being very intense. 2 calls per week, diving as deep as I think necessary into the weeds to find clarity and understanding in human movement and actually coaching with confidence and programming with confidence around the common sort of breakdowns and things that you're struggling with your clients related to movement and strength. So over intake 1 and 2, I've had over 100 coaches and PTs and allied health pros through the intakes, which has been overwhelmingly positive with the response. And I'm very excited for intake 3. So if you want more information, you can jump through the first link down below. There's also an early bird offer currently open to save 25%. That's available until about the mid of December. So if you're keen, hopefully we'll see you there in intake 3. Today's episode is with Coach Kiz. So he's someone that's been in my world for a few years now, and he inspires me. He's made some big changes to his business direction. He's recently just moved purely online, working within the niche of fight sports, S&C, and nutrition. He's making big progress, which is awesome to see. He inspires me. He's also just plenty of fun to have just in and around. Great to chat with and great experience. So hopefully you find this podcast interesting and get a lot from it if you're interested in the S&C world. So thank you very much. Huge changes on the bit of context. I love what you're doing. I fucking love it. I love a pivot. I'm a pivot type of man. I'm fucking in and out of ideas constantly and directions, and sometimes I feel like it's a detriment to me because I just run through walls and don't set anything up. But I love a pivot and I love other people pivoting. Tell me why. Why have you gone so aggressively to fight sports? And yeah, run me through it.
I love it. I love it, man. Yeah, messy implementation is better than no implementation. So run through walls. I do the same thing. Yeah, I got into I niched down, I guess, into combat sports athletes because I was a big fan of combat sports, even through my whole powerlifting journey. So I was a powerlifting and I guess body composition based coach for a while, and at the same time competing in powerlifting myself, I was always a combat sports fan. So I thought, let's personally, I went through a big cutting phase, and there was a big mental shift, and I had the knowledge there from a strength and conditioning standpoint and a sports nutrition standpoint, and it kind of just ran parallel with that. And there was more, I guess, as I changed my own personal training towards Muay Thai, I ended up attracting a lot more combat sports athletes, and I had to make the pivot there. So that's just, yeah, basically why.
Yeah. So obviously you used to powerlift. When were you powerlifting?
Oh, that would have been between 2018 to 2022.
Yep. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming that a lot of your like education and ideas and stuff just stemmed from like true strength expression and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of younger coaches sort of end up doing those sort of things. I definitely fell into that as well, where it was just like, and it kind of becomes all consuming. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's definitely something that I mirrored. And then eventually I got to a point where I was like, fuck, I'm not actually that interested in this stuff anymore. Like it's still, yeah. And I took years to sort of work out my like place, I guess, within it all. But like sometimes when you're doing something that doesn't feel like alignment, your true self, it can be a little like makes work tough and makes like your ideas and your creativity around. Is that something that you felt as well?
100%. Yeah, it wasn't lighting the fire in my soul anymore. So I needed a pivot, and it's just continued to get the flames burned stronger and stronger as the months have gone by.
Yeah, and you've done some fights?
Yeah, so personally, I've competed 6 times in amateur Muay Thai.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So yeah, that's I thought, what better way can I understand the demands of the athletes I coach than getting in there myself and
Yeah.
understanding what the training is like.
Absolutely. What's your record?
I'm a 4-2, so
4-2.
4 weeks losses.
Ah, dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
lost my first 2. And I
Yeah.
came
Oh,
back
really?
on a 4-fight win streak. So
Let's go. You got
yeah.
any more coming up?
Potentially. Things have changed very quickly over the last few months. I did set the goal to do a pro debut 2 years ago, and we're nearly at the 2 year mark. My gym's currently facing a bit of an issue. Shout out to Honor Martial Arts and Coach Vin. He's facing a bit of an issue with the council, and he's business. So unfortunately, the gym's being closed, so my training has taken a little bit of a hit. But at the same token, I use it as an opportunity to just put a lot more focus into. I was already focusing; it's my job, right? But put a lot more of my effort into building my business over these last 3 months, like you would have seen yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. Unfortunate about the councils, man. They make it so fucking difficult. I don't know why they're yeah, we don't need to get into that. I battled with them as well. Yeah. So obviously obviously the big business shift then, the big business change. The one thing I've witnessed from you and why I reached out a couple of months ago and be like it inspires me, and what you're doing with like, especially with your social content. And I'm assuming that it has flowed on with like actually growing the business and lead gens and all of those sort of things. But like the thing that inspires me is like you've just like aggressively gone down that route and like changed and like fucking just run like use that analogy like run through that wall from like a content direction. I can even see like the tone in the way that you're communicating like I remember just before your holiday you were like I've got these 3 calls booked in and like someone's missed the call or didn't sign up and you're like these types like you just like aggressively in that. I love that. Has that been a challenge for you to like change your tone, change your direction? Is it a conscious thing too that you've done like
Yes, 100%, 100%. For the longest time, content. I've always been a pretty charismatic person, and I had a bit of energy about me, or I still do. But I never channeled it in towards my content. It was, I put a bit of effort in, and it was sort of like a commentary based thing. And I thought it's time for me to consistently get in front of the camera and show my personality. And it's taken my business leaps and bounds ahead of where it was, and super thankful for the efforts I've put in because it's paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you found any like processes or anything that other people might be able to learn from that, whether it be like your consistency or where you're getting your ideas from or any of those sort of things?
For sure, for sure.
Like,
So I mean,
do you have a process around it, or are you just like daily just thinking? Like, what do you? Yeah,
that's a bit of it for sure because you can chip away at I guess the KPIs for content creation each week, but it's got to be scheduled at the end of the day somewhat. So typically on a Tuesday or Tuesday I'd sit down and script and I'd create ideas, even if it's just a hook for the beginning of the video, and then sort of working backwards from there. That's the focus on Tuesdays for maybe an hour or two, and then later in the week, leading up to the filming day, which is usually on a Saturday or Sunday for me. I'll sort of refine those scripts. Then I'll make sure that they're finalized by Friday, Saturday. Go out and film on the Sunday. It doesn't happen every single week because sometimes it doesn't need to. I get busier on the onboarding and delivery side of things, so I don't need to put more of the too many of the eggs in that basket. But the way I generate my ideas I've got saved folders on Instagram, and I've got from people who generate content I want to sort of emulate.
yep,
And you're not necessarily copying ideas, but you're looking at structure and what worked well for them and experimenting. A lot of the content, maybe 3 of the posts I've put up in the past 2 months, thankfully have gone sort of viral. But there's a lot of videos that failed miserably. But at the same time, they still have to go up. You have to learn from them.
absolutely. Yeah, you gotta. It's like the Hormozy thing. Like the luck comes from just doing more. Like
Yeah.
you just gotta pump. You just gotta pump. You gotta be consistent. That's my biggest for myself is the consistency. Like I've got so many like ideas and things I want to share, but like and I'm constantly trying to improve the consistency of my posting. So from a business perspective, because I know you used to do a bunch of like in-person stuff. Are you purely online now?
Yeah, so I made the shift recently, as of just before this Japan trip, actually. So I wasn't juggling too much of a face-to-face demand leading up to it, but I worked towards getting to the point where, yeah, now I can comfortably work solely online.
Solely online, yeah. So it's all like one-on-one based online stuff. So like
Yeah,
programming, like your typical online coaching sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah. And is it only are you only servicing now fight athletes? Is that like the crux of it?
that's the crux of it. That's the crux
Yeah.
of it. There are people who I've coached long term who do have more of a body composition
Yeah.
based goal, typical, let's say, fat loss or bodybuilding based goal that I'm still happy to coach because they're long term loyal clients and they fall into that bracket anyway. They're still high performers and they can still hang with the people or the team of athletes I have, and they're on the same sort of wavelength. But yeah, I'd say 90% of the clientele and athletes I coach are combat sports athletes.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely love that. The one name that I always go to with the fight sport stuff is like Stephen Seown up in I think Queensland, maybe Sydney,
Mhm.
Queensland. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and he's another one that I'm inspired by with like the type of posting and like the value that it is, the consistency of the messaging, the consistency of like the style and all of that. It helps that he's fucking shredded. Holy shit, that man is shredded.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like
He's
that,
an athlete.
yeah, he's an athlete, absolutely. He's someone that I look at in like that world. Is who are you taking inspiration from? Who are the people that you're sort of like observing and have influenced you and your ideas?
For sure. I mean, you brought up the main one, Stephen
Yeah,
Soyun, without a doubt. Anyone who's in the space who says they're not influenced by his posts and his thought processes, they're lying because he's a big hitter in the space, and I definitely take a lot of inspiration from him and
yeah,
his training thought process. Other than that, I guess there's people like Kenny Dussault from Canada. His content style, I guess, that he's someone I take a bit of inspiration from, but also, he works with a lot of high level athletes, so it's cool to absorb information from him. A few other guys. I mean, I love Matt McInnes, plyo guy.
yeah, yeah,
He's awesome. I love to absorb what I can from him, and especially when it comes to improving my athletes' ping tier based plyometrics and their ability to really produce force and use maximum intent. I'm constantly using examples he's posting up to help my athletes out. So
yeah,
definitely, yeah, those three come to mind: Stephen Soyun, Coach Kenny Dussault from Canada, and Matt McInnes. A
yeah.
few others, Angus Bradley. I could go all day. Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of people I take inspiration
It
from.
is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bradley, my man, my man.
he's a
Yeah,
G.
I love it, man. I'm all about it. I think you're doing awesome things, and I love the aggressiveness that not aggressiveness in tone, but like the aggressiveness in your attitude towards running down that fucking path and going for it. Because again, as someone that has felt some of those, like I'm not doing the right thing, it doesn't feel like true to me. Like, uh, it can be difficult to change and shift away from something that is ultimately working but doesn't really fulfill you. So yeah, I just want to say, well done, man. It's mad to see, and it inspires me. It really does. Yeah,
Thank you, bro.
I'm
I
keen to
appreciate
see.
that.
I'm keen to see where it all ends up because I think it's just going to fucking fly, man. I really do. And I think the fact that you embody it so well as well, like I really, yeah, that's another thing that I just don't, I just don't. I need to get serious again about training. I just want to play golf, man. Yeah, too good. I love it. I'm fucking all about it. It G's me up. So with your coaching strategy then for these athletes and stuff, obviously coming from a strength background, coming from a body comp background, obviously those things are going to bleed into it. But what are you seeing as like some of the key things that people are lacking, or like programming structure or attitude around different types of training and stuff? Like where's your focus as a coach stand?
My focus as a sports nutritionist and a strength and conditioning coach for combat sports athletes is making sure they're not overtraining and they're not underfueling, and that there's actual structure within their training. Because a lot of the S&C attempts I've seen from even talking with people in the DMs, even listening to people's struggles, or athletes I get on calls with, their biggest struggles, and the thing I help them with the most, and the first and foremost thing of utmost importance is structure and identifying high intensity days. There's no real load management strategy, and obviously if you can weave in helping them become better from a plyometric standpoint, actually structuring the conditioning work and not having them do long slogs on road work for no reason, and Tabata style workouts on the air bike, and actually focus on maximal efforts and longer rest periods. If I can get people to work with that structure consistently, amazing things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a big focus? Because when I think of fight sports, like I don't obviously like, I've never coached a fight athlete or anything like that, but my naive brain for like fight sport, strength and conditioning, um, my understanding would be that sort of like the traditional view would be like running, like the Rocky shit, very running focused, very much like build your base, like all of this sort of stuff, which eventually just turns into a shit ton of volume, both volume in the actual sport of like hitting bags and rounds and sparring and all of that sort of stuff, but just like huge volumes of like running and aerobic shit and like crappy like I'm thinking like upright row, like overhead press circuits and shit like
Yeah.
that. Like the mentality of like, don't show fatigue. Like, is all that stuff like the traditional view? Like, or am I just naive thinking it's all Rocky?
No, you're definitely right. You're definitely right. A lot of that still bleeds into today's what you see today. And a lot of MMA, Muay Thai, boxing athletes. If you're not doing this, you're missing out. If you're not going on the long slog road runs and you're not doing short rest period Tabata style workouts every day, you're missing out. When in reality, that's more counterproductive.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you go challenging those ideas if you've got somebody that comes in like this is the way or this is what my coach says or like is that a difficult and again and my naive brain with fight athletes I just think of testosterone driven males that are like if their idea gets challenged they just fucking throw the wall up and like no fuck you like what like
Yeah.
is any of that in there?
Yeah, I mean, you got to meet them where they're at, right? So if if you can sell them on the fact that their testosterone would probably be higher if they recovered better between sessions and they actually fueled more, then they're bought in usually. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, I've only like a lot of new coaches are open to the idea of strength and conditioning coaches. Thankfully, because a lot of high level MMA
Yeah.
athletes, for example, in the UFC, have strength and conditioning coaches and nutritionists, so they're getting their eyes open to it. I've only ever had to deal with maybe two or three actual skills practice coaches who don't necessarily want to follow want the athletes to follow my approach alongside their training. But yeah, for the most part, I guess it's if I can just get them to trust me
Yeah, it's
and they can follow the program for even 2 to 3 weeks, they'll notice. I notice a lot of the time. Oh, dude, I feel so much more recovered. I feel snappier in sparring. It's you can't really get a direct measure of what's transferring into the actual skills practice room from a strength and conditioning standpoint, but you can get these sort of these feelings. So I'm looking for those.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, you get it. You get a couple of early wins with a good structure, and yeah, it's the same with and I kind of know that sort of stuff, but like it's the same with all of those sort of things. Like you get a couple of early wins, get a couple of good feelings, the trust builds, and then all of a sudden you can start challenging some of those narratives. Because I would imagine also there'd be a bunch with like nutrition as well related to, because again, this is just my naive brain, but I would imagine that there'd be like a especially like around competition phases and like making weight and all of that, there'd be some like this is how it's always been done, and like a lot of it would be counterproductive. How are you managing some of like the nutritional stuff? Do you peak people for like weight cuts, and is it any different to powerlifting weight cut? Like what how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, because the training demand is a lot more physically taxing overall from a bunch of different, I guess, yeah, energy system wise, muscular fatigue wise, musculoskeletal fatigue wise, it's definitely a little bit different. The premise is the same. I mean, you're not going to have many powerlifters that cut and then compete 24 hours later, unless they're like
Yeah.
non-tested athletes in America.
Yep.
But that's where the difference probably lies. There a lot of athletes in powerlifting, I guess, would go the traditional water loading, fiber, low residue diet, water load, maybe sodium manipulation. But with fighters, the biggest thing is a lot of them come from very aggressive traditional uh, fight cut approaches, which then leads to resistance in the coaching relationship. When I tell them they can eat more carbohydrates, when I tell them they can eat bigger meals, and on fight week they don't have to completely cut out carbs. You don't necessarily have to water load to make weight. You might be you've done it every single fight prep, but you don't lose that much weight doing it. You might be a non-responder to water loading. These are sort of things I have to navigate and work around with combat sports athletes. And for me, the approach is always build a big foundation, and it's a lot easier in fight week because if you have a foundation of fiber, you have a foundation of carbohydrates, you can pull away from those things,
Yeah.
and fight week becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've obviously like I don't follow the UFC, but I enjoy like the um I don't even want to call it like the reality part of the UFC, but like some of the characters that are in there and some of the processes and the one that always sticks out to me is like Sugar Sean. Like I just love him and like what he's about and like his pros and I see some of his training and I think he's got a really good like group around him and it's probably why he's such an elite athlete and stuff. But then I see like who's the big fucking the big guy with the block hands that's just knocking everyone.
Peloton, Pereira.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I look at some of the water cut and the cutting stuff that he does. He's losing what's he walking around at and what's he weighing in at? Like, how the fuck are they rebounding from that and being able to physically express the performance of fight? Like, how is that even a process?
Yeah, it's definitely a genetic exception when it comes to. I mean, there are you see a lot of them at the elite level, but there are certain individuals that you won't see. I guess you can't generalize their experience to a lot of the athletes around UFC,
Yeah.
MMA, all combat sports. He's a one of one almost. Even the way he strikes, very one of one. It's yeah, I think he walks around like 105, 110 kilos, and he can make like he used to make 84 kilos, which is
Man,
ridiculous.
how?
Yeah, it's he is a high responder to these cutting strategies. Great sweater, very mentally tough.
Great sweater. Fuck, he sweats
Yeah,
good, man. Yeah.
he's from Brazil. He deals with heat. He's very heat
Yeah.
acclimated. So you know, and
Man.
he's got experience. He's a kickboxer. He's got over I think he's got over like 80, 90 fights. So he's done it. He's done the hard yards. So I guess now it's become more apparent that he's gone up a weight class. He used to fight at middleweight, and this is something I always try to advocate within my athletes as well. You probably don't need to cut as much weight as you've been cutting in the past. You may benefit from fighting a weight class above what you're usually fighting at, getting through a lot more training load, not reducing your risk of getting sick in fight camp, having more pop in your shots, a better gas tank. That's one thing I get met with a lot of resistance with. I met a lot of resistance. Um, Sorry, mumbling my words here. I get a lot of resistance from my athletes when it comes to me suggesting them they go up a weight class. But then, luckily, people at the highest level are doing it now. They're hiring better sports nutritionists.
I
So it
was gonna
trickles
say
down.
it's very similar to like the powerlifting where people observe the elites doing these aggressive water cuts because they've basically maxed out their weight classes. Like they're fucking jacked, they're lean, they're strong, they're 10 years into the training process. And then the amateurs observe that and be like, oh, if the elites are doing these water cuts, I need to do it. But they don't realize that the amateurs walking around 10 kilos overweight, the gas tank isn't there. They got no idea how to actually prepare for fucking. I would imagine that it's very similar in the amateur ranks of fighting as well. They're observing these highest level athletes doing these things, and then, but in reality, just go up a weight class, eat a bit more, don't stress yourself, and you'll probably perform better. Like it probably a
Yeah,
perfect mirror.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, amateur and professional, clear distinction. I mean, different approaches for sure. A lot of the time, it's same day weigh in versus 24-hour weigh in. So I don't advocate for being, fight week. You shouldn't be more than maybe 3 to 5% above your weight class if you're going to cut. When you have a bit more time to play with and you have a 24-hour window to rehydrate properly, definitely, you can be 10% above the weight class if you need to be. But even then, there should be a good chronic strategy in place.
yeah. Yeah, makes complete sense, and I think it's just a good representation of how all of these strategies, they're universal ideas that are starting to push through some of the old, outdated narratives around these sort of ththings. A name that pops up, and I haven't seen much content from him. Maybe I just the algorithm, but is Andy Galpin. Do you know Andy Galpin? Because I think he was doing a bunch of like the fight sport like rehydration strategies and all of that. I remember he was on fucking Joe Rogan like 5 years ago. Do you know that name?
Yeah. Andy Galpin, no, no, I
Dr.
can't.
Andy Galpin. I just remember him talking pretty openly about some of the fight stuff. I think he was heavily involved with like the water cutting and some of those processes. He's like a PhD in I think nutrition and physiology, I believe. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. That was just a name that came into my head.
yeah.
Of the elite guys and the elite teams and stuff, are there like central S&C coaches that are holding a bunch of these athletes, or are they sort of just individualized camps that have like their own sort of team, or are they like governing? I don't know. Like when I think of, again, I'm just using powerlifting as the lens. When I think of powerlifting, like a Mike Teixeira, he's got a whole battery of elite lifters that are underneath him and the reactive training systems sort of Is there the same thing within fight sports, or are they just individual camps?
A lot of times individual camps. There are people who do utilize the, say, UFC performance institutes around the world. They'll have their own S&C coaches that are hired by them, and they work within those labs and gyms to whether it be do more research or work with athletes in camp. That some athletes go down that route. Some athletes go down the hiring International coach, big example might be Corey Sandhagen and Coach Stephen Soyun.
Yeah.
Corey Sandhagen's hired a guy from Queensland, and he fights in America. So yeah, so it's purely online. Sort of similar to the approach I take. I coach some people in the US, and it just depends on the athlete.
Yeah, so makes sense. And I would imagine that it's a lot more of an intimate relationship with an S&C coach for something like a fight sport. Like you want someone there. Like, yeah. In the same way a
Yeah,
powerlifter would want their coach, but I feel like there's a better, I don't know, it feels like you're like a family almost, or that's at least this sense that
100%.
yeah. Just a reminder again that intake 3 of the movement mentorship is open for registration. So we're in the early bird period, which means you can save 25% on both the payment plan and the upfront to get the most out of your education. I think this is the best place to start with myself and actually push yourself to really understand movement, because at the end of the day, we as coaches prescribe movement and coach movement as the vessel to improve outcomes. So if you don't understand movement, you probably don't understand your job too well. So come and join over 100 coaches from intakes 1 and 2 this year and really elevate your coaching and your understanding to find clarity and confidence with your application.
Yeah, I mean, combat sports in nature are very chaotic. So having someone there, whether it be a sports nutritionist or an S&C coach, I myself doing both of them, they can relay consistent communication with me. That's probably the underpinning factor that leads to success within a coaching relationship. Consistent communication with athletes. I love getting on calls with my athletes and connecting on a deeper level.
Yeah,
that helps everything else move smoothly.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. From your own coaching processes, then, obviously covering both the nutrition and the S&C, the lifting and the performance based stuff. How are you structuring sort of like programming structures? And I'm assuming, do you use like a almost like a block periodization sort of framework, or like away from comp, there's an off season, or are you kind of like blending these things? Like how is your structure sort of look for if someone was to fight in 6 months' time, like what sort of considerations are you thinking about?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't get too strict with things. I need to be reactive. Like I mentioned before, like combat sports are super chaotic. If we do have a fight coming up, there isn't going to be as big of a focus on general physical preparation, and moving weight, heavy weights slow. Obviously as hard as intentful we can, but slowly in that regard. It's a lot more max intent, speed based work. A bit more of a conditioning focus if a fight's coming up. If we're maybe more anaerobic focus when it comes to conditioning specifically. But there are general qualities we're working on year round with athletes. It's nothing really leaves the program. It's the Stephen Soyun approach, working things year round, blending it based on where we are in proximity to a fight.
Yeah, just sort of like that vertical integration idea, just picking things up. It's all
exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
I love biases as coaches. I got my biases. Do you have like biases to movements or conditioning protocols? Do you have things that you're like, this shit just works? And like, there's not even like do you have some stuff that's like your flair and your flavor? And if you do, talk us through some of those ideas.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's going to be the air bike. It's where I've put a lot of uploaded a lot of content in regards to conditioning with the air bike specifically. I'm always going to put in the caption and make sure people know, though, you don't necessarily have to use the air bike. There are many. It's just a modality. I just love it because it's low skill demand. You get what you need out of it, and you can. It's very efficient. But you can do the same thing with some sort of road running protocol or like a ski erg. So I have to consider that when certain athletes don't have that around. But other than that, I guess like the whole spectrum of plyometric variations, moving from low tier, deep tier, ping tier, working. One person I take a lot of inspiration from is Jake Tura as well.
I love that.
When it comes tendon compliance, tendon stiffness. That's something I'm working with my athletes year round. A lot of people, I guess, their combat sports based plyometrics are very like single leg hoppy, tippy tappy, like work based things, and that's not going to help combat sports athlete. Yeah, I hate saying that. I'm not seeing as much of it lately. Maybe it's just because of what I'm seeing on Instagram. It's probably just geared towards what I like. But
Yeah.
if I do see it, I'm skipping past it. I don't like ladder drills and shit. There's
Yeah.
better things we could be doing for sure.
Absolutely. What are the common sort of breakdowns for fighters, like in terms of like whether it's injuries or like common, like I know Steven Sayun, to use one of his sort of term, he calls them resilience sites, I guess. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
yeah, so like the neck and the wrist and the elbow and stuff like that. What are the common things that you're coming across from yeah, is it tendon based things? Is it like overloading based things, or is it yeah, like what are the common
Yeah, it'd be everything. I mean, combat sports is just big crock pot of just stress, right? And you got to learn how to manage it. So, of having year-round robustness and resilience site circuits integrated into athletes' programs that are time effective, so you're not wasting too much time in the weight room, can be super handy. There's no way to really prevent injuries, but topping up on that,
Yeah.
I guess that armor building year-round can help.
Yeah.
But I guess the neck's a big one. Bit of head trauma and maybe even wrestling. Like you're gonna go through fast contractions through the neck, the spine, the hips. Especially MMA athletes and jiu-jitsu guys, their
Right.
wrists and hands need a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of hand fighting, a lot of fast contraction, posting onto the ground. If you're meeting your hand into the earth, it's a big amount of force. So yeah, working. I like to integrate, tricep and even four set. I guess what would you call it? A quad set
Giant sets,
of
I think it's
just
called.
giant set,
Giant sets.
giant set. Yeah, of just neck, hip, wrist, shoulder, resilience type work,
Yeah.
nice and efficient.
Because do you do much? So what? Actually, probably a precursor question. When you say fight sports, is it mainly when I think of fight sports, I think of like the UFC conglomerate. So it's like true mixed martial arts. I think of like kickboxing as a separate thing, and then I think of like grappling sports as a separate thing. Is that kind of, and I guess boxing and kickboxing kind of together. Um, are most of your athletes in one of those areas, or is
Bit of a blend, bit of a
bit of a
blend.
blend?
I mean,
Because then
yeah,
yeah, like I would imagine like the demands for like a grappling, like a BJJ, all the rave at the moment, the rage, and everyone loves it and all
yeah,
those sort of things. But when I think of like a BJJ, like it, to me, and again, naive brain, it's like a lot. It as fluid as it is, but it seems to be more of like this isometric dominant strength force overcoming, pulling away, trying to open people up, and like all of. But then when I think of like a fucking kickbox, I'm thinking like reactive, fucking
yeah.
quick. Like, does the demand change much for like a grappling sport versus I don't know, the GPP is still the governing idea, but like, is there much of a consideration of those sort of things?
100%. Yeah, yeah. Like I'll still have the priority will always be grapplers, strikers, all of them, all the whole category. You still want to have a general reserve of strength you want to pull from week to week.
Yep.
So you're not always going to be lifting heavy and slow. You're not always going to be lifting fast and snappy. But generally, the bias is for strikers who need to be explosive and reactive. There's a lot more volume dedicated towards plyometric based work,
Yeah.
reactive based work, working on rate of force development, eccentric rate of force development, uh, real snappy type things. But with the grapplers, I'll have them. I'm doing extra drills to help with how their bodies absorb force when they hit the ground. Even doing rolling drills, letting the rib cage move against
Oh,
the
nice.
floor a bit more. Yeah, like there's a lot more. I guess external rotation, lumbar flexion in grapplers when they're playing guard, and the resilient site work will also get prescribed a bit differently depending on the athlete. But yeah, like you mentioned, you laid it out pretty perfectly. A lot more snappier, explosive with the strikers, a bit
Yeah.
more overcoming isometric based sort of work with the grapplers.
Yeah, yeah. And then like because I would imagine like a true high level MMA athlete is almost as robust as an athlete is. Like I don't
Yeah,
and then I don't know, I observe these wrestlers like these like who's the uh John Jones when he fucking just
yeah.
grabbed who's the French guy that he beat in 13 seconds or whatever it was just
Cyril Gahn.
yeah, and he just grabbed him and he just wouldn't let go of him and he just like slowly got him to the ground and then like what
Just
do you oh man, what do you do against that? Like,
Yeah. It's like like you're fighting like an anaconda. It's
yeah. And I guess it's kind of like Khabib. He was similar. Like he just grabbed them and that was it. Like he just wouldn't
yeah,
let go. Like that
yeah,
is
yeah.
an insane. Have you got much wrestling background?
I did jujitsu for the first 6 months of my combat sports journey and pivot 2 years ago, but
Yeah.
I didn't continue. But did a bit of wrestling, a little bit of experience.
Yeah, man, that's it just seems like a savage skill set of just if you can grab
Yeah,
someone, you, game over. Like literally game over.
yeah. Like obviously having John Jones specifically having the striking threat in his whole repertoire,
And
like
it's
you're already
fucking
scared of
long.
that.
Man.
Oh, super long. Yeah, that ape index is ridiculous. It's stupid, but yeah, having that threat there. Obviously, all fights start on the feet in MMA, and you start striking. But yeah, knowing that there's that threat, and then he can just transition it to another threat is at the same level of intensity is quite crazy. But yeah, like freestyle wrestlers, because Stephen Sion put up a post recently about it, and I'm definitely in agreement with it. Even as a Muay Thai fighter myself, I understand what the training demands of fight camps are like.
Yeah.
Freestyle wrestlers, for sure, specifically because there's no break. In MMA, you have a bit of a break. You can strike
Yeah,
if you
you
need
can
to.
step
You
back
can
and
break from
yeah,
striking and grapple. You
yeah.
can do a bit of work on the cage. Freestyle wrestlers is go. This ridiculous mobility demand, the force they're exposing themselves, the forces they're exposing themselves to, the endurance demand overall from a broad spectrum of energy system demand and strength demand, force demand. Freestyle wrestlers definitely at the top.
Oh man, it's
After yeah,
just crazy athletes. Absolutely crazy. Who are some of your favorite ones to watch and look at?
just like overall
Yeah, just like
combat sports athletes.
who are the ones that you just like, fuck, this is crazy.
Yeah, I love well obviously John Jones MMA is awesome. Corey Sandhagen, funnily enough, he's cool to watch. The all the Nurmagomedovs and
Yeah.
guys from Dagestan, they're cool to watch because they have a good blend of striking as well as wrestling, so they're really complete athletes. Um, from a striking standpoint, there's kickboxing wise, you got Aussie guys like Chad Collins. You got people like from the Azerbaijan of the world. There's so many good high level kickboxers there. Muay Thai. You got Buakaw, boxing, Naoya, in a way. Like there's so many different presentations of athletes across these different sports that are so refined. It's awesome. They're combat sports in general. Just such fascinating athletes.
Oh man, as I'm getting older, I, I just respect it so much more. Like when I was a bit younger, I was like, oh, these guys are just like blockhead idiot. But then I don't know, like it just as I've started, and I think it's a lot of it stems from like the UFC and they like create not in the same way that WWE creates characters, but there's these characters within them, and they kind of like prop themselves up. And again, Sugar Sean, but I guess it's the Conor McGregor influence of those sort of things. But like these people are fucking savages, but they're intelligent, like how they go about it and their processes and stuff. Like it's just changed my respect for the whole. It's wild. I've got so much
Yeah,
respect for all of them. And I think it's crazy, and I think it's an awesome niche to move towards, especially if you're in it yourself. It's mad.
yeah.
Um,
If you want to make it to the top in combat sports, you've got to be a PhD in your sport for
yeah.
sure. Like
Wow.
they're all extremely intelligent in their own right at the highest level, and you don't see that. People from on the outside think it's still think it's cockfighting, chickens against chickens. It's brutal shit. But if you get to that's why I love things like shows like the UFC embedded series before each main event. There's like a 10 episode series. You get to really dive deep into these high level athletes lives personally, and you can see that at the highest level they're fairly intelligent. You're still going to get your brawny dude that
Yeah,
they seem pretty dumb, but you get that in every aspect in
yeah, you
every
get that.
sport, rather.
Yeah. I have a question then for fight camps. So I watched the Fury. He had a little docu series on Tyson Fury, and he basically, my understanding from what he was saying was basically he did nothing until the fight camp, and then the fight camp, it's him, his dad, and Tommy, and they get a house, and the coach comes in, and the chef comes in, and then it's just like it kind of just sounded like school. Like there would be like a full structure of days and like they'd wrap it up and they'd have dinner and they got to be in bed and like all of these. What is going on in a fight camp? Like, Is that
Yeah,
normal,
yeah,
or is that just because he's the elite and done it for so long and he thinks he can just fucking jab someone's lights out from 2 meters away? Like
yeah, yeah. I
what is
mean,
in the fight?
it's that what you just mentioned. It's that from an individual basis. Tyson Fury specifically and that family, they've got their own ways of doing
The
things, and they've been
process.
doing it for years.
Yeah.
It's their process. Everyone's going to have their process. That's definitely not what the general idea of a fight camp would be. You're gonna bounce between a bigger team, and obviously, I think most athletes don't have the personality of Tyson Fury as well. His personality is very all right, and he's got a family. He doesn't want to. Yeah, that's the series was funny. Like he's fully just the abandoned his family in a
Yeah,
sense, and
literally,
he's
just fucking.
leave me alone. I don't want to speak to you for 12 weeks, sort of
And
thing,
then
or
he'd,
whatever it was.
yeah, and then he'd come home for like an afternoon. He'd be like, I've got to get out of here. And he'd just leave. And his wife's like, where's
Yeah,
he gone? Like, yeah,
yeah,
like,
100%. The I guess the athletes in Dagestan, they'll take a similar approach to that, where it's very a lot of people
they
from
go to the
different
hills or
federations.
something. Yeah, they like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the whole upbringing. It depends how you're brought up, but I guess a modern day athlete who lives in a Australia, America, Canada, who has a life in the background. Not that they don't have lives, but they also care about other the aspects of
yeah,
life. They need a balance. They need to balance the both of them. So yeah, I encourage always to you have a rest day for my athletes where you're enjoying life. You're going to the beach for a walk. You're spending time with your missus. You're connecting. Like at the end of the day, you we all fall under what the self determination theory and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have each individual athlete has certain needs. I've got some athletes who, if who don't want any distractions. They're a lot more data driven. They're tracking absolutely everything. I've got some athletes who work better long term and see more success almost having a free weekend each weekend.
yeah,
Right? They take it a bit stricter throughout the week, Monday to Friday. The weekend comes around, they're a bit more relaxed. They have relaxed targets they can follow, and they let loose a bit. That helps them get to the fight and still win because it works for them.
yeah, absolutely. Is it normal for the fight? How long's a typical fight camp? Like,
It'll
what's
go
the?
on a case by case basis.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
it
Yeah.
yeah, it's. I mean, you probably want to be putting in at least 6 weeks. Like like it depends on the sport.
Yeah.
MMA, MMA at the pro level, you're probably getting like at least 2 months typically.
Oh, really?
Uh,
Yeah.
Muay Thai though, the culture is very just especially if you move to Thailand and fight. I've got some guys that are fighting every 3 weeks almost. So it's
Whoa.
yeah,
Holy
it's
shit.
fight go fight. So it's very like I've got some athletes who don't haven't got any fight experience yet, but intend to fight. For them, it's okay,
Yeah.
we can then lock in a date. We've got 4 months. Let's map things out in a more block periodized way, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You got more time to play with things. Yeah. Oh, well,
yeah,
I didn't know that certain sports are fighting that regularly. Every 3 weeks. In
yeah, but even like depending on amateur and professional, amateurs there are some amateur kickboxers and boxers that have across a 5 year period, like or 6 year period from a young man into or like a young lad into early 20s. They've fought almost 300 times. So you're fighting every weekend
holy
almost.
shit.
It depends where you're from in the world, but yeah, Vasily Lomachenko has the like most highly decorated amateur record from like 12 years old. I think he's got over 350 amateur fights. But then pro fights, he's got maybe 20 or 30. So it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow, I had no idea that it's that regular.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
mainly at the amateur level?
yeah. It's a lot more like the more you get in there, the better you'll get, the quicker you'll get,
Yeah,
sort of
and
thing.
it's that mindset of like just fight experience. Just yeah.
Yeah, then at that point it just becomes normal. Then that way you like actual professional fight camps are nowhere near as stressful if you're coming
Yeah,
from
that
that
makes
sort of amateur background.
yeah, because I would imagine that within the professional world as well, and I don't know if this is only just recently, and again, my heavy influence is the UFC, but like to for professional, like money's involved and all of that, like you kind of want to create the narrative and like have time to build it and all of those sort of things, where within amateurs it would literally there'd be none of that. It would just be like, here's the
Yeah,
card, fucking bam, 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 and they just run and roll and just go.
100%. There's no time for the publicity and bullshit.
Yeah,
You need
yeah.
to you're
Man, that is
every big yeah, they're all doing every professional athlete you see now. Most of them have a big decorated amateur career if they're still if they're at the highest level.
Yeah, that is wild. Every three up to I'm just yeah, because I again I'm not too exposed to like the kickboxing side and all of that sort of stuff. That is crazy to me that they're getting in the ring hard. Another question, and you might not have a take on this, but like Sean Strickland is like he's like I just basically spar. Like
Yeah.
is that what he does? His whole like
Yeah, I mean, people do have to take that with a grain of salt as well. It's not always going to, like, sparring falls under a spectrum as well. There's technical sparring and there's harder sparring. Sean Strickland's probably going to hard spar more often than not, but because of his fighting style, he can afford to. He's pretty, yeah, he's got that
turtle shell. What is
awkward,
it?
the
The
Philly shell awkward. Yeah,
yeah, just fucking
it's some sort of hybrid. Yeah, he's relatively evasive, and he keeps his range a fair bit. But that works for him. But I mean, it just goes to show, like, keep the main thing,
yeah.
and you're gonna probably be all right. Like, that's the focus of my athletes as well, not to get too obsessed with S&C as well, and be too caught up in
Yeah, it's
a missed movement here and there. It's like, as long as I'm still allowing you to keep the main thing long term for as long as possible, you're going to see a lot of success.
yeah, absolutely. Makes complete sense. Of your current client list, what's the regularity of the average fighter?
Regular, like, in terms
Like
of
yeah,
competition.
how often does like an amateur, I'm not thinking like Thailand spec, but like how long does like an Australian amateur, let's just say kickboxing, how many fights a year are they undertaking?
You're probably looking at within Victoria, where most of my amateur coaching experience comes from. You're looking at once a month, once every 2 months.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so
That's still
at least
that's
four or
still
5 weeks
crazy to
between
me.
fights.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people will have their breaks, and because injuries happen in combat
Yeah.
sports, and you're gonna have to. There'll be a period where it's the cost of doing cool shit, right? Like, even in powerlifting, you're lifting heavy as fuck. It's a cool thing. Sometimes you're gonna have to work around injuries. It's just the nature of elite level performance. But yeah, even then, like, where a lot of combat sports guys, even if they are injured, they're still getting in there. It depends on the mentality of each fighter. Like, I had an amateur boxer recently who he's dislocated his right shoulder twice in fight camp. I navigated that with him, and he was still so dedicated and committed to the cause that he got in there and he just fought with his left hand and won. So,
Oh
like,
my God.
he is throwing a certain strike with the right would pop out his shoulder. He's getting surgery soon, but I had to navigate that with him. I had to
Oh,
top up on impact stiffness within his training, see what he could tolerate, get on calls with him and checking consistently. I was messaging him multiple times a week, like, how's the shoulder? How's the shoulder?
that's
You're good for
wild,
sparring.
man.
But it just depends on the athlete. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And yeah, it's crazy. Fuck. Man, that is just it's just not my mindset. Like I'd be like, I'm fucking done. See you later. I'm fucking going
Yeah.
home. Yeah, it's crazy. Just a different mindset. I love it. So where do you like obviously you're new to the pivot, in terms of but like do you have like goals? Like I'm assuming you want to just keep working through and just like climb the ranks, I guess, as a coach and get some higher level guys. But like have you yeah, what are your aspirations just with business now? You're mainly online, obviously, but like where do you see all this going?
Yeah, just continue to work towards filling my books up completely to a point where things are a little bit too inefficient for me to run on my own. It's still just me on this team. So in a very good position right now compared to where I was 2 years ago. Just going to keep chipping away. What I'm doing now is working. So, but I guess the goal from a I guess intrinsic standpoint and what my why is like, and what really lights my soul and the fire in me as a coach. Like, there are big hitters out there. I love in a decade's time to be noticed amongst them.
Yep,
People like Jordan Sullivan, people like Steven Sayun. You know, as long as I stay on this path, I think I can get to that sort of level.
absolutely.
But just focusing on my team, focusing on daily tasks I need to focus on, and we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I love it. If you had any advice for a young coach who's maybe was in a similar position to you a couple of years ago, what would you give them?
Don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Don't hold on to your money. It's sitting in your bank account. It's not doing anything for you. Obviously, be smart, but yeah, don't be afraid to get your face and personality out there, because you build a subconscious relationship with people who watch your content and you don't know what's waiting out there for you, you're doing a very cool thing in coaching. It's a very unique experience in terms of work and from a job perspective. So if you've got it in you, commit hard, take risks. If things feel uncomfortable, just take the leap. Consistently, always take the leap. That's part of the reason why I got into fighting as well. It it was more proof to myself that I can take the leap when shit's scary and come out the other side stronger. So
Yeah.
yeah, don't be afraid to make the risky investment.
Yeah, I love that. Roll the dice. It's one thing that I'm always trying to tell people. Don't be afraid to roll the dice. Don't just hold them. Roll
100%.
them. Take a risk. Take a yeah.
Messy implementation every single day in some
I
way,
like
shape,
that.
or form. Well, 100%.
I like that. Take action. If people wanted to follow you or look at your content and stuff, like where can they find you? Obviously, the links will be down below. But do you have like a product? Have you developed anything yet? Is that a plan actually?
Yeah, down the line, the
Yeah.
focus right now is just my one-on-one
Yeah.
coaching. Yeah, I'm kind of just I'm going to mention now. I guess you can only really find me on TikTok and Instagram.
Yep.
Uh,
Oh,
at
you're on
Coach
TikTok as
Kids.
well. How's your TikTok going?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. The Instagram definitely a lot more successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, TikTok is still pretty decent. I mean, I haven't hit as many views as Instagram, but yeah, definitely my main focus channel is Instagram. But Coach Kids on both. Coach KYZ.
Yeah. I didn't know you're on TikTok. What's your experience been like on TikTok? You just posting the exact, we're going to get into some content stuff here, but
Yeah.
is your strategy the exact same, Instagram and TikTok? So you just post the same video? Do you change it at all?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd experiment with is like the title in the beginning,
Yeah.
but for now it's the same. I guess the only thing I would want to experiment with in the near future is sort of more raw videos responding to comments.
Yep.
But yeah, the main focus, which I don't go ahead and change my strategy if things are working. So I'm just going to focus on what's working, and that
Yeah.
is Instagram. Um, and focusing on stories, broadcast group, posting as much value as I can on Instagram. That's the main thing.
Yeah, makes sense. I didn't know you're on TikTok. I just followed you.
Thank you, bro.
We
Thank you, bro.
we
I'll follow you back.
on the gym. The strength culture back when the podcast was fucking dominating. We created like a bunch of TikToks. Some of them went crazy, like millions of views and stuff.
I
And now
remember. Yeah.
we got like 2,000 follows in like a week, one of those
Yeah.
weeks. And I was like, all right, this is how TikTok works. And it got to like 13,000 and then we kept posting and then the views just tanked and we are getting like 300 views. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, it seems so volatile over there. Yeah, I love TikTok
Yeah.
just scrolling, but like the business side of it, I'm just like, yeah, never quite
Yeah. You got to
understood.
pivot. Got to pivot a lot. I think the TikTok algorithm. I don't know too much about the algorithm,
Yeah,
but what from my experience, TikTok definitely appreciates a variety and change, and I guess a bit more a rawer
I think the
content.
raw
Instagram,
stuff makes sense.
yeah,
Do
yeah,
you
but
ever plan
good
on?
content. Good content is good content.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it'll work if it works. I guess, just showing up each day increases your chance of luck in that aspect. And sometimes it's just consistent. Consistency is the biggest thing. Like we can blame the algorithm and blame all that shit. Oh, my story views are tanking, and I'm getting shadow banned. But if you're not showing up each day, regardless, you're not going to get anywhere.
Doesn't matter. One of the frames that I can't remember who I learnt it from, but it might have been Mr. Beast actually. He was like, every time you want to say algorithm, just say audience. The audience is against it. The audience doesn't like it. The audience isn't
Yeah,
working for me. Like if you just change, literally just in your vocabulary, change it from the algorithm, it's the blah blah blah, and just think about it as no, that's simply just the people watching it. If they're not liking it, if they're not commenting on it, if they're not sharing it, the audience doesn't like it. You got to get the audience.
yeah.
That was a little frame that has helped me a little bit with some of my like posting ideas.
The market always decides. The
Yeah.
market always decides for sure. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
Yeah, I think it was Mr. Beast. Yeah, I love it all, man. As I said at the very start of this, man. I just love watching people just fucking run through a wall, man, and go for it. It's sick. And I reckon you're gonna fucking just take it. And I know your skill set is there. Not that you need my sort of like praise or whatever, but I love it. I'm so inspired by what you're doing, and I'm yeah. So keep going,
I
man.
appreciate that, bro. You're definitely in my earlier days of coaching. You were definitely one of the one of the big influences in my whole approach to coaching. And I even got mentoring from you back in the
Yeah.
day, in a sense. And it's you've been an awesome connection to have along my journey, and I appreciate those words a lot, man. It's gonna these next calls I'm getting on and check-ins I'm doing. It's gonna light my fire to get them
Gee
done
me
with
up.
even more energy now.
Gee me up.
That G'd me up a lot, man. It's
Yeah, no,
fucking
it's sick. I love it,
yeah.
man. It's fucking mad. You're gonna fly. I already know you're feeling that, but I'm witnessing it and I'm just like, this guy's gonna fucking pop. Here he goes.
I appreciate that, bro. I
Good
appreciate
man.
that. I'll keep showing up. I'll keep showing up.
Good man. All your links will be down below. And yeah, thanks for jumping on, man. I do appreciate it. And that wraps up today's episode. Thank you very much for making it all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, you got some value from today's podcast. I really enjoyed the chat with Kiz. He's a weapon. He's just fun. And I think that quality is really important for coaches, just to have some confidence, to have a bit of a laugh and enjoy the process of your career development. So thank you very much, Kiz. All his links will be down below, as well as the links for intake 3 of the movement mentorship. So if you're keen to level up your understanding with human movement and the application to strength training in the gym, getting people to move better, feel better, actually get confident with your application for coaching, that is where I would recommend jumping in. We are currently in the early bird phase, so there's 25% off for both the upfront and the payment plan, which knocks it down to about $750 for the upfront. If you're an international, that's basically half price because our Aussie dollar is so trash. So, yeah, if you're keen on learning from me, and my passions within this industry, which is human movement and programming and strength development in the gym, I'd love to see you there. Come and join over 100 coaches from intake 1 and 2, and push yourself and your application and your confidence as a coach. So we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for checking out the podcast.